$205 billion. We all know Jeff Bezos is disgustingly rich, but how much is $205 billion really? Most of us can't even fathom how much money that is. I can sit here and tell you that the sun is 94 million miles away, but you and your 14-minute mile run time can't even imagine how far 10 miles is, let alone 94 million. Don't you worry though, I'll try to help you understand just how rich Bezos is. You should work on that mile time though. Now, as any business major frat bro loves to point out, Jeff's money isn't actually liquid. A lot of it is tied up in investments and whatever the hell he spends his money on. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have piles of money lying around. If he needs money, he can always sell his stock in Amazon or Facebook or whatever the fuck else he holds. But then he'd have to pay taxes on that sale. And we all know how much the rich hate paying taxes. While he does sell stock, there is a quirk in the financial system that lets him use his wealth without realizing the gains on those investments, which means he doesn't have to pay tax on it. He can take out a loan against the value of those investments, basically using them as collateral. The interest rate on those loans are much lower than the rates that he would get by selling the stock, sometimes as low as 2 to 3%. This oftentimes leads him to have lower overall tax rates than me or you. Kind of like when you bought Tesla calls on margin on Robinhood against your GameStop and AMC portfolio and then folded on the March sell-off. Except Jeffrey here doesn't have to worry about that. Before we get to the $205 billion, let's try to visualize just how much $1 billion is. So if you plug $1 billion into pretty much any interest calculator online, it won't even accept that number. This is because us lowly peasants are never supposed to touch that amount of money. Luckily for you, I went to college and got a B in stats, so I'm more than qualified to do this math for you. The average return of the S&P 500 every year is 10%. So if our lovely billionaire friend just put all of his money into VOO and chilled, he could collect a cool $100 million every year to survive off of. Now we've got to remember that these have to be sold in order to get the money. So for long-term cap gains tax, we have to subtract 20% from that, which would be $20 million. Include whatever the fuck state and local taxes we got, and we can throw out another few million. Point is, our billionaire friend can park his money into the stock market and still afford to fuck all of our girlfriends if we had any. Now let's get to Bezos as well. If Bezos actually went through and bought Cyprus, or if he made his own country called Bezonia, he would be snug in 68th place out of 174 countries in terms of wealth. From his alone, he has the equivalent of NASA's budget for the next 10 years. But who knows how long that's gonna last after he took his billionaire excursion to space. Jeffrey here could buy the entire NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL and still have money left over. With 7.6 billion people on Earth, Jeff Bezos could get every single one, including himself, $26. It doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that you can't even pay your rent because you're an actual failure. Now let's say Jeff wanted to do something that's actually good and wanted to help people who are in absolute poverty. Absolute poverty aren't the people working in Jeff's warehouses like you typically think of. Absolute poverty are people who live on less than $1.25 a day. That's $456 a year. Now, 1.89 billion people, or 36% of the world's population, live in extreme poverty. Jeff could give every single one of those people $108, which really doesn't sound like a lot to you or I until you realize that that is a fourth of their yearly income. The point isn't to demonize Jeff Bezos, it's to point out how much money he alone has. And that's without bringing out the Bill Ackmans or the Mark Zuckerbergs or the Warren Buffetts. When we're at a time that most people my age can't afford to go to college or buy a home on our own, there are people like Jeff Bezos who have pretty much unlimited money. And while it might not all be liquid, there's still a vast amount of it that could go to good use. Fractions of this money can help lift people out of poverty and help stem inequalities throughout the world. It's understandable to see how people get angry at billionaires like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk because they hoard a disgusting amount of money. Do they deserve it? That's for you to decide. We all have our own opinions, most of them politically charged, but it's for every single person to decide for themselves. No one can stop them from getting money, but it's important for people like us who will never touch that amount of money to realize how much can be done with it.